Good day everyone, so hope you're all doing really well. Let's talk a bit about Mavuika and the apparent problems that the Genshin community has assigned to her, most notably how her burst mechanics work and the fact that you, in air quotes, need Citlali and Shilonen to get the most out of Mavuika. Now, I'm not going to deny it, if you're running Mavuika and either Bennett or Farina with Shilonen and Citlali, then yes, you're gonna get maximum damage. But is that really what matters? Because when you go into something like the Spiral Abyss, it really only matters whether you can clear the content in the allotted amount of time. Whether you're using one particular unit or another doesn't really matter as far as outcomes are concerned. And I do think that there is a lot to be said about trying to experiment with teams that you would not normally play together, or with teams that a lot of people are not considering for Mavuika. For example, here in the background I'm using the Obsidian Codex with Mavuika, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by giving her like her E skill, which will help generate some of the fighting points there in the background, so Mavuika charges up her own burst effectively. And then we're running Layla with an instructor set to help with the EM sharing and the melt. Sucrose is going to help with the resistance rate, which is incredibly important, and as well as with some EM. And then Kokomi with the 68% like attack buff from Thrilling Tales and Tenacity. And there you go. There is your C0 Mavuika doing a decent amount of damage, nothing crazy to write home about, but if you've got a decent team to beat the first half in this Power Abyss within about a minute 30, you can certainly use this team for the other remaining 1 minute and 30. Certainly possible if you've been a long time player at AR60 and have a decent set of artifacts. And that's what I want to effectively present to you in this video. You do not need characters like Citlali and Shilonen when you have other alternatives available, alternative playstyles available, even if you're not going to get the quote-unquote most maximum amount of damage. In my opinion, you could run a lot of variations. We did the Skokomon variation as well, and now we're doing the variation of Layla, but let's say you're someone that's don't have Kokomi, you don't have Layla, you for instance could run Bennett, Auroron and Chevreuse with Mavuika. That could be very fun. You'll get the max fighting spirit, and then obviously all of the support from Chevreuse and Bennett to do a lot of damage. In that case you're not running a melt or a vaporize team, but hey, you'll still get good damage. That's an alternative team, for example, that you can play. So from my perspective, yes, Mavuika has very unique, well, she's got a very unique mechanic with her elemental burst, but it's not like it is as punitive as a lot of people make it out, because you've got units that can play naturally into it. So for instance, with the Sukokomon team, you want to do lots of normal attacks and swirls with Sucrose, because that's also how you're gonna get the damage. So it's not like you're putting everything onto Mavuika and Mavuika must have this massive amount of damage. In fact, you're just spreading out your team's damage a bit more, whereas the conventional wisdom would have you do the hyper carry style where you invest everything into one character, but that's not always necessarily the way to do it. And that's kind of what I want the Genshin Impact community to do, is to just experiment a bit more. So yes, whilst we can criticize Hoya for putting two limited banners next to each other and not giving us enough rewards or free pulls to compensate for the fact that this is the first time in history that they're doing it, a valid criticism by the way, the fact that you can criticize Mavuika based off of the banner positioning is odd in my opinion, because they might as well have just put Citlali in the second half, and then all of the supposed issues that Mavuika still has would still be present. if that makes sense. People would still complain about the fact that you need Natlan characters for the burst, which you don't. You need them to get a consistently like maximizing the burst, but other than that, just to get good outcomes you can do it. And that is kind of my argument against what a lot of people have with regards to Mavuika. She is a character that you as well can play off field. You can just use her elemental skill, and that could be very good for revisiting, let's say, some of the Emily Byrne teams that you've got, which could also then perhaps include some of the Ganyu melt teams. So there are different ways of playing Mavuika, not just as a main carry, but also as a sub-DPS, for instance, like we've spoken about earlier, you could, for instance, now run Raiden Shogun, Mavuika, Kujo Sara, and let's say someone like Chevres, and then you'll just focus on that one big hit with Mavuika, but other than that, you'll just use her in a support role, and you'll just then rely on the overload, and then Raiden being on the field to do the bulk of the damage. That's the cool thing that I've learned like from GC Sim, which is like a platform to do a lot of the Genshin Impact like calculations and stuff. What the guys do on GC Sim and their Discord in the community is that they test out an insane amount of teams and team combinations, and that's just something that I find so fascinating, because it tells you that there are so many ways of building and playing characters and enjoying this game that you don't see in popular content creation. Popular content creators are only going to complain about the obvious issues, but they're not really willing to experiment with various solutions and to be able to tell you, hey, here are legitimately all of the alternatives that you can consider. A lot of people thought that Mavuika is very niche and that she doesn't offer the same as someone like Farina does, but then again, a lot of people are also glossing over the weaknesses that someone like Farina has. So for instance, you kind of need to maximize the HP fluctuations, not the healing, but the HP fluctuations to get the maximum buff out of Farina, and lo and behold, Fontaine characters, or certainly a couple of them, can do that a lot better than others. It's the same situation here. You're gonna have certain units and certain teams that just work better with Mavuika, and it's not something that's entirely new to the game. So I'm kind of like really surprised by a lot of people criticizing Mavuika when she is in fact, perhaps with the exception of Olakino at C0, the strongest pyro DPS that we currently have in the game. And it is just fun playing around and having something other to do, and it's the same with her off-field capabilities. So yeah, from my perspective, this video is all just about sharing ideas, showcasing some ideas, and telling you that you don't need Shilonen and Citlali to get the most out of Mavuika. Even if you only get one of them on a rerun or whatever, that can help a lot. In fact, there could be even future characters that could work really well with Mavuika, but sometimes we can miss those synergies if we don't experiment and truly get to know a character fully. Like within a week, you can't tell me you've mastered Mavuika. There's so much to the character, and that's also what we're all still currently doing. We're still learning about how to make the most out of her. So from my perspective and in conclusion, Mavuika is an incredibly fun character. She brings a lot of like new dynamics and stuff, and certainly I'm not a fan of pyro characters, but certainly one of my favorite pyro characters to date. Alright, let me know what you guys think about all of this and whether you've enjoyed the showcases. Thanks for watching.